Inside a steel coil storage facility, a worker walks toward one of the massive coils to inspect its position and stability. From a distance, everything appears normal, and the heavy roll looks completely secure. But with cylindrical loads, appearance can be dangerously misleading. As the worker moves closer, the steel coil suddenly begins shifting sideways. Within seconds, the several-ton object loses balance. The worker attempts to move away, but there is almost no time to react before the coil crashes onto his legs and pins him to the ground. Nearby employees immediately rush over and work together to prevent the situation from becoming even worse. Thankfully, their quick response helps free the trapped worker before more serious injuries occur. Steel coils may look stable while standing still, but they store enormous momentum. At a busy logistics yard, workers are carrying out normal loading operations around several parked trucks. One trailer is transporting a massive steel coil weighing several tons. At first everything appears under control, but suddenly the coil breaks loose from its secured position. The heavy roll begins accelerating down a slight incline near the loading area. A nearby worker instinctively attempts to stop it, likely reacting out of panic and trying to prevent damage. However, the momentum of a multi-ton steel coil is far beyond anything human strength can control. The worker is violently knocked to the ground as the runaway load continues moving through the area. Colleagues immediately scatter and clear the path to avoid being struck themselves. Moments like these demonstrate why personnel should never attempt to physically stop heavy moving loads. At a warehouse loading zone, a forklift operator is transferring heavy pallets into the back of a trailer. The load is raised high enough that it partially blocks the operator's forward visibility, forcing him to rely on careful maneuvering. At the same time, a pedestrian, believed to be the truck driver, walks directly into the forklift's operating area without checking the surroundings properly. Focused on the trailer rather than the machine, he unknowingly steps into a dangerous blind spot. Because the elevated pallets block the forklift operator's line of sight, the collision happens suddenly and with very little warning. The worker is struck before either person has enough time to react. To reduce these risks, facilities must enforce strict pedestrian exclusion zones and clear communication procedures. At a cement production facility, a worker approaches a furnace during what appears to be a routine ignition process. He prepares the system and begins introducing material into the burner area as part of normal operations. However, this time the worker uses a different substance rather than the approved ignition material normally required for the furnace. At first nothing seems unusual, but inside high-temperature systems, even small changes can create extremely dangerous chemical reactions. Seconds later, flames violently burst outward from the furnace opening. A wave of heat and fire rapidly expands into the surrounding area, forcing the worker to jump backward to avoid being engulfed. Fortunately, he escapes with only minor injuries. A delivery truck carrying several large granite slabs arrives at a construction or fabrication site. Four workers gather around the truck and begin unloading the heavy stone panels manually. Instead of using specialized lifting frames or mechanical supports, the workers attempt to stabilize the slabs by hand while repositioning them. Initially, the material appears balanced, but granite is extremely heavy and becomes unstable very quickly when unsupported. Without warning, multiple slabs begin tipping sideways. The massive stone panels collapse together and trap one worker underneath before anyone can react. This event highlights why proper unloading systems such as A-frame racks, cranes, and lifting clamps are essential when handling industrial stone materials. A massive container ship measuring hundreds of meters long begins maneuvering toward a docking area at a busy port terminal. Tugboats and operators appear to have the situation under control as the vessel slowly approaches the berth. But despite appearing calm, the ship is traveling slightly faster than it should for such a confined area. The giant container ship crashes directly into several port cranes positioned along the dock. The impact causes parts of the cranes to collapse while others bend and twist under the force. Containers shake violently and nearby workers scramble to safety as the situation turns chaotic within seconds. The vessel also strikes another ship positioned nearby, causing additional damage throughout the port. Fortunately, no major fatalities are reported, though one crane operator suffers minor injuries. At a construction site, workers are unloading a massive prefabricated panel using lifting equipment and rigging cables. Several crew members stand nearby guiding the load into position while the crane operator slowly lowers it. At first the operation appears stable, but during the descent the panel suddenly shifts its center of gravity. The heavy material slips unexpectedly from its balanced position and begins falling toward one of the workers standing close to the load. The worker reacts within a split second, ducking and scrambling away just before the panel crashes to the ground beside him. Had he hesitated even slightly, the outcome could have been fatal. Surveillance cameras at a facility entrance capture a dangerous transportation failure involving a tractor carrying several large industrial rolls. As the vehicle moves through the entrance area, one of the heavy cylindrical rolls suddenly becomes unsecured. The massive roll falls from the trailer onto the roadway and immediately begins rolling backward down a slight slope. Nearby workers and a forklift operator suddenly find themselves directly in its path. Fortunately, everyone reacts quickly and evacuates the area before the runaway load reaches them. Industrial rolls, coils, and drums must always be secured using heavy-duty restraints and wheel chocks specifically designed for rolling materials.